Are they? Yeah, I was sad. I have to experience it. It would be a competition anyway. Oh my God, like, we're ready.
Last minute questions before your test.
I went back because I realized I wasn't going to take Friday, just in case you go back. For number 18. If we were setting this up, we have the 2 equals A over 5 squared. Some of you put the third power. Pretty careful with that. It should be to the second power. And then multiply what you have on both sides. So that K was 50. And then after you find K, I'm gonna write this on here because B is 4, and we're looking for B, but it's still squared. So to get B by itself, multiply both sides by B squared. Divide both sides by 4. 1.5, I think is what that was. And then take the square root of both sides to get rid of the square. So in blue, it's right above the x squared. So if you hit second, x squared, you'll get square root. So 3.54, 3.5. Would have been that answer. Questions on that one? That's the thing. So if you go into math and go into this one, number 5, you just have to put in a 2. But if you go into math and hit number 4, that is something different. That is the cube root, not your square root. So you can use either or. Right, last one. For the last one, the cost C varies greatly with the width and the length. So you could have called that W and L, X and Y. Really, it didn't matter. So this would look like C equals KWL. That's a curse of L. If the deck costs $1,200, when the width is 12 and the length is 20, you would put in those numbers, find K. I think that was 240. And divided both sides by 240. Okay, equals 5. And then the last part, what will the deck that is 10 feet wide and 10 feet long cost? So you have W and L and K, you need C. And if you multiply all of those together, 10 times 10 is 100, times 5 is 500. And you're looking for costs of dollars. And points were similar. Set up your equation, solve for K, get K, set up your equation, solve for C, get C. Questions about this or last minute questions?
Can you explain the difference between ordinaries and simple? Jointly
And inversely. Jointly is like directly, you're multiplying. Inversely, you're dividing. So jointly and directly multiply K times whatever. Inversely divide by whatever. K divided by whatever. Other last minute questions? I need your desk cleared off except for your calculator. I need phone to put up in a calculator pocket.